Coming up, new leadership challenges the status quo in the kitchen, in the film industry, and in the studio. Plus, a quest to eliminate homelessness in Seattle. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amirawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. The census report card is being released, and there are issues with the count for Native Americans. COVID-19, politics, and an ever-changing deadline that cut the Native American count short weren't in the 2020 census plans. Despite a well-financed campaign across the country, Native people living on reservations expect to be undercounted again. 2020 figures show there are 9.7 million people who are American Indian and Alaska Native. This is a significant increase from the 2010 count that showed 5.2 million people. However, these numbers don't line up with tribes' own enrollment figures, in part because the census allows people to self-identify. These numbers matter because they are used to distribute the $1.5 trillion in federal funding each year. The two reports assessing the national count by the statistical agency are set to be released this week. In Colorado, a new bill aims to create an Office of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives. The bill, titled End the Epidemic of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives, would operate in the state's Department of Public Safety. According to Colorado nonprofit Native Women's Wilderness, the rate of murder for Indigenous women is 10 times higher than the national average. If it becomes law, the bill would improve coordination and response as well as awareness around MMIR cases. ICT spoke with Colorado State Senator Jessie Danielson, who co-sponsored the bill. She says it was important to include Indigenous voices in these efforts.
I've worked with the community now for a couple of years, including urban Indigenous leaders across the state, and the tribal leaders from both of our geographically based Colorado tribes. And we made this a priority, have crafted the language together. It was really led by the community.
The bill will now go into committee hearings where the public is encouraged to comment. Well, the Navajo Nation is in the process of identifying citizens who may be eligible for a car dealership settlement. The Office of Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission is searching for citizens who purchased cars from a chain of dealerships known as Tate's Auto Group. These buyers may qualify to receive part of a $450,000 settlement. The owner was accused of manipulating consumer information on financial documents, according to a FTC complaint filed in 2018. And tribal leaders believe many of the customers were citizens of the Navajo Nation. The settlement was reached last summer and was approved by a federal judge in Arizona. It is believed as many as 4,000 consumers were impacted. Big changes are coming for New Zealand's public TV and radio stations. On Thursday, the government announced that its television and radio broadcasters will merge into a new single organization. The merger comes as rapid changes are taking place for how people consume news and entertainment. New Zealand officials say they also hope the move better positions them to reach younger audiences. In making the announcement, the Minister of Broadcasting and Media says Māori's stories and voices will not be lost.
And as both TVNZ and RNZ had for decades, it will provide trusted news as a core service. Importantly, it will continue to deliver on the Crown's treaty obligations and provide Māori stories and perspectives. And we want it to collaborate with and support the wider New Zealand media sector where appropriate.
The new board will set up next month, and the merger is expected to complete in July of 2023. In Alaska, Indigenous women are reclaiming traditional face tattoos. From the fashion world to social media, tattoos are becoming more commonplace for some Indigenous women. Many Indigenous communities around the world, like the Maori and Inuit, have distinctive traditional facial tattoos. Gwich'in tattoos often appear as 3 distinctive lines on the chin, as well as lines on the cheeks or corners of the eye. The width and spacing of a woman's chin tattoos announce what band they come from. Gwich'in citizen Kwana Chasing Horse stars in Gucci campaigns and has landed on a Vogue Mexico cover. Chasing Horse says for her, the tattoos represent overcoming generational and personal traumas. The model and Indigenous rights advocate says she hopes more young women find confidence when they see her tattoos. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, a commemoration of relocation, new leadership for the Chief Seattle Club, and the Sundance Institute's Indigenous program. But first, meet the next level chef. Piet Despain won Next Level Chef, the new cooking competition from award-winning chef Gordon Ramsay. She is from the prairie band Potawatomi Nation and is Mexican. Both cultures inspire her recipes. She shares part of her journey.
The person who will be our next level chef, Piet.
I've been in Los Angeles for 4 years, and it's been very, very tough, not only as a woman, as a chef, just as a Native American, Mexican, minority. It was really, really tough. And I faced homelessness. I was couch surfing. I lived out of my car with 2 suitcases for a year, just kind of bouncing around, me and my cat going places to places. And it was just really an uncomfortable feeling. And I just, used to sit on the beach and cry and like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And of course, my family's like, you can always come back home. But I'm one of those people that when I set my mind to something, like I have to see it through. I have to give myself that opportunity to really like do it until the end. And I kept thinking, is this the end of it? Like, is this all? Do I have to go back to Kansas now and feel like a failure? And I kind of just, dug deep and I thought to myself, no, I can't do that. And I continuously just worked towards my dreams and sharpened my skill set and did everything I possibly could to make this dream work. And it wasn't until I started falling into my heritage and really making food that represented myself and represented Indigenous people that things kind of started clicking and moving into a better direction. And I'm a very spiritual person, and so I had to do that, dig deep and really recognize like what my soul's purpose was and what am I here to do, what am I here to represent. And it wasn't until I started asking those questions that I started getting the answers. And so it landed me fortunately on the Gordon Ramsay's cooking show Next Level Chef. And I experienced a lot of hardships during that people didn't quite know about either. But I lost a friend while I was in the first week of filming for that show. And I almost left the show 1 week in, but I decided, like, just because her journey is over doesn't mean that this journey has to end for me. Like, this is like my wildest dreams coming true. And so I, really dug deep. And fortunately, I was able to pull through and end up on top as the winner.
That was Chef Piet Despain. In California, one of the few Indigenous-owned wine labels, Kita Wines, is closing its doors. ICT editor-at-large Mark Trahant spoke with the winemaker Tara Gomez, who is one of the few Indigenous women to make wine.
12 years ago, the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians purchased the Camp 4 vineyard and opened up their own label, Kita Wines. The name itself was from the Samala language and means Oak Valley Oak.
Like I was using Kita as a way to tell our story, the story of our tribe and our ancestors, and the connections all within that. So yeah, it was super important to be able to put the culture aspect as a way of storytelling.
Gomez said she is grateful for the tribe for investing in this project, even if it has come to a close.
So my new project, so yes, we're here, Camins to Dreams. This is my winery that I share with my wife, Mireya. We started this in 2017. And so Camins translates to path in Mireya's Catalan language. And through all the routes and paths that we have traveled, it has finally led us back here to my hometown, so the path to our dreams. And now we're living our dreams that we had set very early on in life. One day I always dreamed about having my own winery and her as well. And so, yeah, we're finally doing it, and I couldn't be more proud. So yes, as one chapter closes, another one opens, and I strongly believe that, and I'm seeing it here with my own label of Camins to Dreams.
In Lompoc, California, Mark Trahant for the ICT Newscast.
In Shawnee, Oklahoma, the Potawatomi Nation is remembering its 155th anniversary of moving to Indian Territory. The Treaty of 1867 was the final push for Indigenous families to move from Kansas to Oklahoma. It promised more than 575,000 acres of land. Kelly Mosteller has served as the director for the Citizen Potawatomi Nation Cultural Heritage Center since 2010.
So the Treaty of 1867 was written to find a way to get the Potawatomi who had lost land because of broken allotment promises, the railroad trying to come in and purchase land in Kansas. It left a lot of our tribal members landless and with nowhere to go. So in 1867, the federal government signed a treaty with us to have this escape clause, if you will, to sell the surplus lands in Kansas and purchase a reservation down here in Indian Territory. That was, of course, the goal of getting us out of this area that had land that was really appealing to settlers and farmers and the railroad industry, and move us down here to the land that was seen as sort of less appealing in Indian Territory. So it laid out that we would sell those lands, we would purchase the reservation in Indian Territory, and that we would have to self-fund the removal from Kansas to Indian Territory. So it wasn't an organized force removal like we had experienced from the Great Lakes to Kansas. So it was one of those things that logistically was a little bit more complicated, because once you've sold off that land, and if you can't afford to then move to the new reservation you purchased, you're sort of in this situation where you have to figure out how to make that happen for you and your family. So that's why there was a little bit of a lag from when the treaty was signed in 1867 until we actually moved to Indian Territory 5 years later in 1872.
Stories of removal are far too common in Indian country.
This is our experience of a larger policy. Removal, allotment, moving people into reservations, opening up lands that were seen as, prime for the arrival of settlers was a national policy. This was happening to tribes all over the country. And so I like to point out when I'm educating our tribal members about this and the public that this really is one really specific example of this larger policy. And we can look at how it played out by the fact that, the treaty, just like all of our other treaties, was broken. The timelines were not followed through on. The tribe was supposed to be able to, have access to monies to help them make this move possible, and those promises were broken. So, it really is just sort of that microcosm where you can say, let's look at this one treaty, let's look at this one removal experience, let's look at how the challenges that our tribal members faced in just surviving during this 5-year period where they didn't have a land base where they lived anymore. They were having to live on the lands of their relatives and seek out these temporary, safe havens until they could move south and try to make a go of it yet again in a new place. So, I really do like to use these examples of our treaties to say, and this is one experience of one community, and this was happening all over the country and was part of this larger, very detrimental policy that the federal government enacted.
That was Kelly Mosteller, director for the Citizen Potawatomi Nation Cultural Heritage Center. The Phoenix Indian Center is celebrating 75 years with the Indigenous Community Fashion Showcase. ICT correspondent Karina Dominguez was on the red carpet.
It feels amazing. My heart is just like very complete, and some of the people that I taught how to make ribbon skirts, they actually wore their ribbon skirts on the red carpet tonight.
Rebecca Jarvie is a fourth-generation beater and sewer from the Rocky Boy tribal lands in Montana. She built a brand during the pandemic after a mask that she sewed went viral. That led to her partnering with the Phoenix Indian Center. Last year, she taught 7 ribbon skirt sewing classes. This year, the center is celebrating 75 years serving the urban Native community, and anniversary festivities included a series of community events focused on culture, including the Indigenous Community Fashion Showcase Jarvie curated.
And I think that really met and fit with their mission as the Phoenix Indian Center as serving their people for 75 years.
The show offered an opportunity to individuals who didn't know how to enter a fashion show or were afraid to, as well as designers who were established.
I'm so thankful for the Phoenix Indian Center. Ever since I started working with them, I really I feel so lucky, and I don't know very much other places that really work and do a lot for their people. Being Indigenous is so beautiful. I feel like we need to find that gift and then embrace it.
Jarvie's ribbon drip was featured in her latest collection, Being Indigenous is Beautiful. In Phoenix, Karina Dominguez, reporting for ICT.
The Chief Seattle Club now oversees millions of dollars in housing projects. Executive Director Derek Bellegarde talks about the struggles.
My predecessor, Colleen Echohawk, always knew and talked about we're disenfranchised out of the system, not just out of services, but even actually the housing itself. And we knew that we had to get into that game to actually start addressing some of the disparities in our community. So it was a really long fight, we just completed it about 4 weeks ago. We've been on our first lease-up effort now. We're about 2/3, 3/4 of the way done now. We got the building filled. But yeah, it's 80 units. The ground floor is going to also, with our partnership with Seattle Indian Health Board, the ground floor is going to have a full clinic with a pharmacy there to support the community. Also, we're going to be opening up a cafe soon, where we are going to actually integrate it with our work program to actually hopefully train baristas and things like that to get into that field. But yeah, we went all out in the art to ensure that it is a Native space. Like I said, we wanted to create a sense of belonging, a sense of love and pride.
That was Derek Bellegarde from the Chief Seattle Club. Adam Perrone has been tapped to succeed Bird Runningwater as the head of the Sundance Institute's Indigenous program. Perrone started as a short film programmer for the Sundance Film Festival.
I started with the program back in 2007 as an intern. I've sort of worked all the different positions since then, and working with Bird. And, Bird's been a great mentor, friend, and, something like family as well, too. And I think, I think spending all that time with the program and with Bird and really learning not only what the program has done, but it's sort of its legacy within this space, and knowing what it does and seeing how we can keep it going forward, and just trying new things as well too. So I think that's what I'm really excited about. I think that it's again, I think sort of how when Bird left, sort of where everything was at was like such an insane moment. If you were to think back, not even a decade, even 5 years, that something like this would have been possible within sort of this current moment of Indigenous filmmakers working both in the Hollywood system and then also abroad, and then also people that are also working in the art world as well too. There's really I think there's been this huge momentum of just work and artists that people are taking notice of in a real way as well too. So I think that I'm just excited to keep it going. So
that was Adam Perrone from the Indigenous program at the Sundance Institute. The 2022 United States Artist Fellowship Program comes with a $50,000 unrestricted prize. Among the 63 individuals honored is Marty Two Bulls Jr. He's based in Rapid City, South Dakota, and is a full-time faculty member at Oglala Lakota College. His family is well known for their artistic accomplishments.
My father, Marty Two Bulls Sr., is an accomplished artist and editorial cartoonist. I have a wide variety of mediums covered through my family, from painters to beadworkers. We're a really big family out here in South Dakota. And they're all really excited and supportive of this award.
Two Bulls won the traditional arts category, but like Lakota culture, it evolves.
I'm an interdisciplinary artist, which means I work in a lot of different mediums. I grew up doing a lot of painting and drawing, and over the years have spent a lot of time cultivating, a ceramics practice, a printmaking practice. I do a lot of digital arts. So the easiest way for me to categorize my work is as a contemporary Lakota interdisciplinary artist.
That was Oglala Lakota artist Marty Two Bulls Jr. Acclaimed Ojibwe visual artist Jim Denemy has died. To honor his memory, let's watch this video from TPT in Minnesota.
I did a painting a day for a year in 2005. I was really being plagued by a lot of distractions, not only that year, but normally. And so I told myself this was going to be about experimenting, exploring, and playing, and not about reaching expectations and destinations with the artwork. This was like going back to 8th grade art class, where I can remember just having fun playing. I came home late one night and I was so tired, I told myself, well, just do 2 paintings in the morning. And then I thought, well, that's like quitting smoking and having one tonight and starting again in the morning. I said, just make a red circle with a yellow line through it and go to bed. I tried to paint a portrait as fast as I could. I did it in maybe 4 or 5 minutes. When it was done, I was just thrilled. I said, holy smokes, look at this thing. I painted 2 more that night. I was just so excited. When I decided to clean up and go to bed, it was probably after 1. And so the next morning I came out and I looked at these 3 paintings and I was still wowed. I said, if I had waited to do these 3 paintings this morning, 3 completely different people would have emerged. And so I realized that the creative energy was kind of like a river. And so you tap into it at that moment in time, and that's what you get. So what I would do on this painting today necessarily wouldn't work out. I probably wouldn't have worked in the same order that I did today, and something else would have happened. I operate as a contemporary Native artist. It's who I am. I cannot factor that out. I cannot redefine that. I work very honestly, and my identity feeds into every painting I do, whether that's consciously or abstractly. Who I am is in my work. So a lot of my work does pertain to my culture, my Native American Anishinaabe identity, and it's something that I express because I'm proud of who I am and where I come from. The diptych that I'm currently working on is for an exhibition for the McKnight Fellowship, which is really one of the most significant awards I have been presented with in my career. Well, the concept of this painting is understanding the creative process and accessing that. Once I understood how getting into painting blocked out everything, and I saw this visually as sticking your head in this oven and escaping into this dream world, and people are pulling on my legs trying to get me out of the oven and stuff. This part here is the reasonable real world we live in and are a part of. And the larger piece that's going to be 7 feet by 7 feet, I'm painting it in the lower part of my studio, which is my garage. And this larger piece represents the creative world, the dream world, where all artists and writers and musicians go for their inspiration. There's going to be other artists and musicians and writers throughout this composition entering this creative world, and they're all going to be emerging through these volcano forms. I start out with sketches as documenting ideas and thoughts, and then I go back and reference them, but I don't stick to them. I don't have to. I don't like to. I don't like working from blueprints or photographs and just keep the inspiration coming, and let the unexpected happen. And so I have no idea what the finished product is going to be, only that I hope it's going to be spectacular. I tell people that my pie of time is cut into major sections, and sleep, work, family. I'm left with this little wedge of pie to do my artwork, and I have to cut that in half to do the administrative side. Applying for grants, shows, getting work ready, getting work photographed. I'm hoping that at some point I can be a full-time artist in the studio and just living off my income from artwork. Some point, I'm hoping to be in here full-time every day and living the life.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.